Welcome, my family. Before we jump in, make sure to like, subscribe, and share this video with your friends and family. I'd also love to know, where are you watching from and what time is it there? Please hype me on YouTube. Thanks. I used to think the hardest part of my 20s would be figuring out a career, maybe paying rent on time or dealing with student loans. Nobody warns you that sometimes the hardest part is learning how to walk away from people you thought you couldn't live without. Back in March of 2014, I packed up my life in Milwaukee into the trunk of a silver Honda Civic that rattled every time it went over 40. I had 2 battered suitcases, a guitar I hadn't played in months, and a stack of sketchbooks stuffed with half-finished watercolors. I told myself I was driving toward a clean slate, though in truth I was running from my parents' crumbling marriage, from an ex who left more bruises on my spirit than my skin, and from the version of myself that kept shrinking to fit into other people's expectations. The drive to Portland, Maine took me nearly 2 days. I remember pulling into the city late on a Sunday afternoon, the Atlantic air colder and sharper than the Midwest wind I was used to. The sun was setting behind rows of old brick buildings, and the streets smelled faintly of salt and coffee. I found the attic apartment I'd rented on Congress Street. It was small, barely enough room for a bed and a folding table I used as a desk, but it had a slanted window that looked out over the harbor. For the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe. The first weeks felt like freedom disguised as routine. In the mornings, I'd take my sketchbook down to a little cafe on the corner, order a cheap black coffee, and sketch the fishermen unloading crates or the tourists wandering by with cameras. At night, I worked shifts at a seafood diner by the water. The work was exhausting, running plates of fried clams to tables of families on vacation. But I liked the noise. It reminded me that life could be messy and loud without being dangerous. I had promised myself I'd keep things simple. No dating, no letting anyone too close, no more men who made me feel small. I even wrote it down on a sticky note and taped it above my desk. No more men who make me smaller. Then I met Julian. He was sitting outside the cafe one morning in April, strumming his guitar like he had all the time in the world. His case sat open at his feet with a handful of coins inside. He wasn't the kind of man who demanded your attention, but people couldn't help slowing down as they passed. Something about the way his fingers moved over the strings made you feel like the song was just for you. "Mind if I sit here?" he asked me, nodding toward the chair across from mine. I glanced at my sketchbook, then back at him. His dark hair was a little too long, falling into his eyes, and he had a smile that came easy. I shrugged. "It's a free table." He slid into the chair with a kind of ease I envied. "Drawing. What do you sketch?" "I've seen you here before," he said. "Always, whatever doesn't move too fast," I said, closing the cover of my book. "Mostly people." "People, huh?" His grin widened. "Think you could capture me?" I laughed, shaking my head. "Maybe. But you'd have to hold still, and I doubt you're good at that." That was the beginning. We talked until my coffee went cold about music and art and how Portland felt like a town built for second chances. He told me he was 29, originally from Boston, and made a living playing gigs at local bars. When I got up to leave for my shift, he stood too, slinging his guitar over his shoulder. "See you around, Clara," he said, like he already knew we would. And of course we did. Every morning after that, Julian seemed to be at the cafe, waving me over like we were old friends. At first it felt like fate, like maybe moving halfway across the country hadn't been running away, but running toward something new. Back then, I didn't see the shadows. I only saw the sunlight streaming through his smile. Julian had a way of making the world feel smaller in the beginning, but in a good way. My mornings weren't just mine anymore. They were ours. We'd sit together on the patio outside the cafe, me with my sketchbook, him with his guitar, trading stories about the people who passed by. He'd nudge me, pointing at a couple bickering on the sidewalk. "Bet they're arguing about dinner." He'd whisper. I'd grin, adding quickly to my sketch. Or maybe he forgot their anniversary. It felt easy. He listened in a way few people ever had. He asked about my art, my family, Even about the breakup I still carried like an invisible bruise. When I told him I wasn't sure I wanted to talk about it, he didn't press. Instead, he strummed a slow tune and said, "Then we'll just sit with the silence." It was hard not to be drawn to that kind of gentleness. By early summer, we were seeing each other nearly every day. He'd show up at the diner just as my shift ended, leaning against the lamppost with that lazy smile, strumming a tune under the streetlight. My co-workers teased me about the mystery musician boyfriend, and I'd blush telling them it wasn't that serious. But it was. One night, after we walked along the pier, Julian brushed a strand of hair behind my ear and said, "You know, you're the only person I feel like I can really breathe around." The words cracked something open inside me. I'd been carrying so much guilt and shame from my past that hearing someone say I mattered, that I was different, felt like a balm. But small signs started slipping through, and I ignored them at first. One evening after my shift, I found him outside, hands stuffed in his pockets. "Enough," he said lightly, though his eyes darted toward the door. "Took you long." "I had to close out," I explained, tugging my bag higher on my shoulder. "Sure, but I saw one of those drunk guys talking to you. What did he want?" "Nothing. He was asking about the menu. He's harmless." Julian nodded, but his jaw tightened. "Boundaries." "Just making sure. Guys like that don't respect." I brushed it off. Maybe he was just being protective. Maybe after what I'd been through before, I secretly liked the idea of someone caring that much. By July, he'd started showing up at my apartment more often, sometimes unannounced. He'd bring groceries or flowers, saying he wanted to take care of me. It was sweet, until it wasn't. One night I was FaceTiming my younger sister Emily. We were laughing about something dumb from childhood when Julian walked in. He sat down next to me, arms folded. After I hung up, he said quietly, "Why do you waste so much energy on her? She never supported you." "She's my sister," and I said, "I don't need her to agree with everything I do." He shrugged but kept staring at me. "People like her hold you back." I told myself he didn't mean it, that maybe he was just tired. But the next time Emily called, I hesitated to pick up, hearing his words in my head. That was the start of it. Little by little, my world revolved around him. And at the time, I thought that was what love was supposed to look like. Autumn rolled into Portland with brisk winds and orange leaves scattered across the cobblestones. My art had taken a back seat by then. Most of my sketchbooks sat unopened, gathering dust in a corner of the apartment. Julian insisted we spend more time together, and whenever I tried to pull out my paints, he'd say, "You're wasting your talent on scribbles. Why not paint me something that matters?" I'd laugh it off, but I stopped trying after a while. The first real crack appeared one morning when my landlord, Mr. Peterson, knocked on the door about a leaky pipe. I answered, hair messy, still in my pajamas. We talked briefly in the hallway, nothing serious. That's when Julian appeared, stepping between us so quickly I almost stumbled back. "What's going on here?" he asked sharply. "Just reminding her about the plumbing," Mr. Peterson said, raising his eyebrows. Julian's hand found my wrist, gripping it just a little too tightly as he leaned down and whispered, "Why are you smiling at him like that?" I froze. My landlord looked at me, confused, then nodded politely and left. When the door shut, I pulled my arm back. "Julian, what the hell?" "I don't like the way he looks at you," he said, voice low. He wasn't looking at me. He was talking about pipes. Julian's expression softened instantly. "Hey, I'm sorry, I love you too much to lose you." He kissed my forehead, and for some reason, the apology felt heavier than the accusation. That's how it went. Every time he crossed a line, he followed it with tenderness, like a bandage on a wound he created. And I kept convincing myself the bandage was enough. By winter, I'd quit my job at the diner. Julian insisted he could cover the bills with his gigs. "Exhaust yourself serving people who don't matter," he'd said. "Focus on us. On me." Why I tried selling sketches online in secret just to keep a piece of myself alive. But even that felt risky. He had a way of picking up my phone, scrolling through it under the pretense of keeping distractions away. One night he deleted a contact without telling me. "Who was that?" I asked when I noticed. "Doesn't matter," he said calmly. "Someone you don't need." And just like that, my circle grew smaller. Friends drifted away when I stopped returning calls. Emily texted less often. My paints dried up in their jars. The scariest part wasn't how much I lost. It was how natural it started to feel. December 2015 arrived with snow blanketing the streets and a tension in the air I couldn't shake. One afternoon I received an email from a gallery I'd applied to months earlier. They'd accepted one of my watercolors for their New Year's Eve exhibition. For the first time in over a year, I felt something spark inside me. When I told Julian, he smiled too wide. "Galleries can be brutal." "That's great, babe. But are you sure you're ready?" "I just want to try," I said firmly. The night of the exhibition, I dressed carefully, slipping on a dress I hadn't worn since before I met him. My hands shook as I buttoned it. This felt like more than an art show. It felt like reclaiming a piece of myself. But when I arrived, Julian was waiting outside, gripping my old sketchbook in his hand. "What are you doing here?" I asked. He leaned in close, his voice a sharp whisper. "You'd embarrass yourself without me. You need me." I felt the world tilt, his words sinking like stones into my chest. People passed us glancing curiously, but no one stopped. For the first time, I didn't argue. I just stepped back, walked inside, and turned off my phone. That night, I slept on a friend's couch, trembling but resolute. I knew something had broken beyond repair. The aftermath wasn't clean. Julian flooded my inbox with apologies, with recordings of songs he wrote just for me. Then the sweetness turned to bitterness. "If you leave me, you'll regret it." With help from my gallery friend, I filed for a restraining order. The police said they couldn't do much unless he broke it. For weeks, I flinched at shadows outside my window, convinced I saw his figure under the streetlight. In time, I moved again, this time to Boston. I taught art to kids in a community center, rediscovering the joy of painting through their laughter. Life wasn't perfect, but it was mine again. Even now, years later, whenever I pass a street musician strumming a guitar, my chest tightens. I remember how warmth can disguise itself as chains. Love should never cost you your freedom. The most dangerous influences don't always begin with cruelty. They begin with kindness, with someone who makes you feel chosen, only to slowly close the walls around you. Real love gives you room to grow, not reasons to shrink. I grew up in Rochester, New York, in a neighborhood that wasn't flashy, but it had its small charms. Maple trees lining the sidewalks, neighbors who waved as you walked by, and the occasional snowstorm that made the world feel magical for a few days. I was always the quiet kid, more interested in sketching and photography than sports, though I tried both in middle school just to fit in. My dad had lost his job at a factory 2 years earlier, and since then, I'd been doing what I could to help with bills, shoveling snow, babysitting, and eventually working part-time at Maple Brew, a small coffee shop near the edge of the strip mall. Photography became my escape. My camera wasn't just a tool, it was a shield, a lens through which I could observe the world without being fully in it. I carried it everywhere, to class, on walks, even to the coffee shop. I liked capturing things people ignored, the way light hit a puddle, the quiet moments between strangers on a bus, the frost on the edge of a car windshield. It gave me a sense of control in a world that sometimes felt too big. It was a Friday night in early December 2018 when I first noticed him. The first snow of the season had started falling, a thin, wet layer of slush forming over the roads and sidewalks. I had just finished my shift at Maple Brew, closing up the shop around 10:30 p.m. Most of the regulars had left hours earlier, leaving just one man sitting in the corner with a leather notebook. He hadn't ordered anything in hours, yet he occasionally looked up at me in a way that made my stomach tighten. Something about him was off, but I brushed it off as imagination. Jenna, my coworker, offered to wait with me for my Uber. She was kind like that, always looking out for others despite having her own worries. Her younger brother was sick, and she juggled extra hours at a nearby pharmacy. I insisted I'd be fine and didn't want to bother her, a decision I regretted the moment I stepped outside. The snow made everything quieter, muffled, almost dreamlike. But in that dream, there was him. I first saw him standing by the lamppost at the far end of the parking lot. He wasn't moving, just there, watching. My mind raced. Maybe he's waiting for a ride, maybe smoking. But he wasn't smoking, and his face was obscured by a hood. Every step I took, he seemed to adjust, subtly, angled to face me. My Uber app said 3 minutes away. 3 minutes stretched like 3 hours. When he spoke, I nearly jumped. "Cold night, isn't it?" His voice was calm, too calm, and it came from behind me. I hadn't heard him move, but suddenly, he was closer than I expected, 10 feet away, just enough to feel the weight of him. I forced a polite smile, my voice trembling. "Yeah, it is." "Working late?" he asked, casual, almost teasing. I lied. "Just grabbing something quick, not working." My heart thumped against my ribs. He chuckled softly like he knew something I didn't. "Around this time most nights." "I've seen you before, though." "You close up." I realized then that he had been watching me for weeks, maybe longer. And in that moment, I understood I wasn't just uncomfortable. I was in danger. For the next week, I couldn't shake the feeling of being followed. Every time I left Maple Brew or walked home from class, I scanned the streets, looking for shadows, strangers, anything that didn't belong. At first, I thought it was paranoia, an overreaction fueled by too many late nights and cold walks alone. But when I told Jenna, she nodded slightly. "I've noticed him too," she said quietly one afternoon while we cleaned the counter. "The gray hoodie. He doesn't order anything, it just sits there sometimes." The guy in my stomach dropped. It wasn't paranoia. It was real. I tried to adjust my routine. I started leaving the shop with coworkers, walking in groups, taking different streets. But he adapted too. Weeks later, I saw the same figure across the street, half hidden under the flickering streetlights, always watching, never approaching. One night, I stayed behind at the shop to take inventory. It was almost midnight. I had headphones on, music drowning out the soft hum of the neon sign. When I finally locked the door, I froze. There he was again, standing by the lamppost, hands in his pockets, hood low. My legs felt like lead as I walked across the lot. "You shouldn't trust every driver either," he said when I approached my Uber, which had just pulled up. I didn't look back, sliding into the car, hands trembling. The older driver asked if I was okay. I nodded, saying nothing. How could I explain someone was stalking me without sounding insane? That night I barely slept. My dreams were fragmented. Streetlights, hooded figures, snow falling too fast, and my own footsteps echoing in an empty parking lot. I woke up drenched in sweat, the camera on my nightstand a cold weight against my skin. I started documenting everything, not just for my own safety, but for proof. Notes, sketches, even pictures of the lot and the lamppost. I became hyper-aware of patterns. He always appeared on Fridays, always around 10:30, always at the same spot. He seemed to know when I would be alone, when I was vulnerable. One Friday, I arrived early to close the shop. I hid near the door, camera ready. Sure enough, 10 minutes before closing, he appeared. Not moving, just observing like a predator waiting for the right moment. My fingers shook as I took a few discreet pictures. He noticed and turned his head slightly. For the first time, I saw his eyes. Cold, calculating, not humanely curious, but watching. I considered calling the police, I really did. But what would I tell them? A stranger standing? Watching? It sounded ridiculous. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized I'd have to protect myself alone. I bought a small pepper spray keychain, carried it at all times, practiced slingshot motion in my room. I walked differently, stayed in well-lit areas, and avoided distractions. Even the snow, once magical, now felt like a hazard, masking movement, making shadows deeper. Weeks passed. He didn't escalate. No approach, no threats. But the psychological toll was heavy. I couldn't concentrate in class, couldn't sleep without checking the windows. My friends noticed my nervousness. "It's just one guy," Jenna said. "Maybe he's harmless." But something in his presence told me otherwise. One night, I stayed at Maple Brew after closing again. I left the back door unlocked just to make a quick exit if needed. He appeared again, but this time, closer than ever, just 20 feet away. I held my camera in front of me like a weapon. "You see the world differently," he said softly, studying me. "You notice things others miss." "Yes," I said, voice shaking. "And I notice you following me. Leave me alone." He tilted his head, smiling faintly. "We'll see." And then he disappeared, melting into the night. That was the last time I saw him in person, but the fear lingered. Every dark corner, every streetlight, every lamppost reminded me of him. I changed my routine, avoided the lot for months, and started leaving class later, taking cabs home instead of walking. Months later, the snow melted, and the city returned to its usual rhythm. I never saw the man again at Maple Brew or across the street. But the paranoia never fully left. I carried my camera everywhere, not just for art anymore, but as a shield, as a comfort. The stranger taught me lessons I didn't want but needed. Awareness, self-preservation, and trust in intuition. I realized that danger doesn't always announce itself loudly. Sometimes it waits, silent, patient, watching. And the best defense isn't confrontation, it's vigilance, preparation, and the courage to leave when necessary. Even now, walking through empty lots or dim streets, I remember him. The gray hoodie, the stillness, the way he made me feel like my every step was known. And I know that while he's gone, the lesson remains. You never really know who's watching, so you must always watch yourself. The stranger in the parking lot taught me that safety is not a given, and awareness is a skill you must cultivate. Trust your instincts, take precautions, and never dismiss the feeling that someone may be watching. The world can seem safe, but vigilance and preparation are the only shields against unseen threats. When I think back to the fall of 2014, I don't remember the crisp air or the changing leaves or even the excitement of being 20 and in college. What I remember most is the apartment on Logan Street, and the way it felt like both freedom and prison at the same time. Money was always tight for me. My parents lived in Nebraska, and though they helped when they couldn't cover the kind of rent Denver demanded. So I took what I could get, a 3-bedroom on the corner of Logan, a block away from a laundromat that smelled like bleach and a dive bar that blasted music until 2 in the morning. It wasn't glamorous, but it was cheap. And at 20, cheap felt like the only thing that mattered. I didn't move in alone. Emma and Lauren came with the place, already living there when I signed on. Emma was unforgettable from the start. Loud, quick to laugh, the kind of person who could walk into a room and instantly know everyone's name by the time she left. She majored in communications but spent more time organizing beer pong brackets than attending lectures. She had that quality of being effortlessly liked, even when she didn't deserve it. Lauren, on the other hand, was quiet to the point of disappearing. She was neat, careful, always hunched over her biology textbooks at the kitchen table. She wore sweaters in every season and apologized too much, like existing was an inconvenience. I found myself somewhere between them, just trying to keep up with classes, work my shifts at the bookstore, and hold on to some sense of balance. At first, the apartment was fine. The radiator hissed like it had lungs. The kitchen smelled faintly of burnt toast no matter what we cooked, and the floors creaked enough to sound like footsteps at night. But it was ours, and that felt like something. Emma kept the place lively with friends and laughter. Lauren kept it orderly, and I kept reminding myself that this was temporary, that the stress and smallness were worth it for the independence. But cracks started showing quickly. Emma loved having people over. At first it was fun, friends laughing on the balcony, music spilling into the hall, late-night talks around the kitchen table. Then the parties grew, and strangers began crashing on our couch, leaving cigarette butts everywhere, drinking our milk straight from the carton. One night, after finding a guy I'd never met asleep in the hallway outside my room, I confronted Emma. "Hey, can you at least give us a heads up? I've got an exam tomorrow." She rolled her eyes and smiled that careless smile. "You're older." "Relax, it's college. You'll miss this when." But I wasn't so sure. Lauren, meanwhile, avoided saying anything directly to Emma, but I noticed her locking her door at night. Once, while we were both brushing our teeth, she leaned close and whispered, "Swear I woke up and someone was standing in my doorway. I thought it was you." It wasn't me," I told her, my stomach twisting. When we brought it up to Emma, she laughed it off. "You've been studying too much, get some sleep." That was Emma's way, never serious, always a joke. But the more she laughed, the more uneasy I felt. The first real cracks weren't about noise or parties, they were about money. We'd agreed to split rent and utilities evenly, but Emma had a habit of forgetting. When I brought it up, she leaned against the counter with a smirk. "You make more at your job than I do, right? What's $20? "It's not about the money," I said, heat rising in my face. "Then what is it about? You being uptight again?" She winked like it was a joke, but I could see in her eyes that she meant every word. Lauren and I ended up covering her share more often than not. She always promised to get us back, but she never did. And slowly it stopped feeling like she was just careless. It felt intentional. Then came Chase. I first met him when I came home from work one night and found him sitting in our kitchen, feet up on the table, beer in hand. He was older, mid-30s maybe, greasy hair slicked back, a smug smile that didn't fade even when he looked me over like I was a bug under glass. "Who's this?" he asked Emma, jerking his thumb toward me. "My roommate," Emma said with a shrug as if I wasn't standing right there. From that night on, he was around constantly. At first, just now and then every other night, then almost every night. He didn't live there, but it started to feel like he did. I didn't like the way he looked at us, me and especially Lauren. His eyes lingered too long, his grin too wide. Once I caught him in the hallway staring at Lauren's closed door like he was debating whether to knock. One night I woke up to glass shattering. I rushed out to find Chase standing over a broken lamp, Emma laughing at his side. "You can't just trash the place," I snapped. "We live here too." Emma's smile vanished. "Don't talk to him like that. He's family to me." Family. The word hung in the air like smoke. From that moment on, she sided with him against us. Lauren stopped spending time in the common areas. I followed her lead. The apartment no longer felt like ours. It felt like his. By late October, the tension in the apartment was unbearable. Emma mocked Lauren for being paranoid, teased me for being uptight, and whispered to Chase when they thought we couldn't hear. One night, Lauren and I sat on the fire escape outside my bedroom window, wrapped in blankets against the chill. She whispered, "She's not the same Emma we met." "I know," I said. "She scares me now." I didn't say it out loud, but I agreed. It wasn't just her. The whole apartment felt off, like it had soaked up their hostility and turned against us. The smell of burnt toast was stronger. The radiator hissed louder. The creaks in the floors felt heavier, like footsteps we couldn't see. Then came the night we realized we weren't just dealing with carelessness anymore. We were dealing with something darker. I came home from work to find my bedroom door wide open. Drawers rifled through, notebooks scattered, my journal tossed onto the bed like someone had been reading it. Lauren's room looked the same. Emma and Chase were in the kitchen, drinking and laughing. "Did you go through our stuff?" I demanded. Chase leaned back, smirking. "If you've got nothing to hide, why does it matter?" Emma laughed. God, you're so dramatic. We were just looking for a lighter." I stood there shaking, rage boiling in me. Lauren appeared in the hallway, her face pale. She didn't say a word, just grabbed my arm and pulled me into my room. We locked the door behind us. That night, she whispered, "I can't stay here anymore." "Neither can I said, already packing a bag. We moved out the next morning. No dramatic fight, no screaming match. Just two girls with backpacks and duffel bags, slipping out while Emma and Chase were passed out on the couch. We found a small sublet across town just for the rest of the semester. It was cramped, the radiator didn't work, and the neighbors upstairs stomped around like elephants. But it felt safe, and safe was worth everything. Emma didn't call. She didn't text. For a while I expected some message, some confrontation, but there was nothing. A month later, I heard from a mutual friend that Emma had dropped out of school. She'd moved in with Chase full-time. No one saw her much after that. She stopped showing up at parties, stopped answering texts. It was like she'd disappeared. Lauren tried to talk about it sometimes. "Do you think she regrets it?" she'd ask. I never knew what to say, because I wasn't sure the Emma we knew was even still there to regret anything. It's been years now. But I still think about that apartment. I still remember the creaking floors, the hiss of the radiator, the constant smell of burnt toast. But mostly, I remember the way Emma's laughter shifted, how it went from infectious to cruel, from a sound that made you feel included to one that made you feel small. Sometimes I wonder if Emma was always that way, if Chase just brought it out of her, or if she became someone else entirely. I don't know which possibility scares me more. Lauren and I stayed friends, but even now, we don't like talking about Logan Street. When we do, it's in hushed tones, like speaking about it too loudly might make it real again. College is supposed to be about finding yourself. For me, it was also about learning who I needed to stay away from. And Emma, well, she taught me that sometimes the people you trust the most are the ones who can turn into strangers overnight. The apartment on Logan Street taught me that bad influences don't always come from obvious enemies. Sometimes they come from the people we laugh with, live with, and trust. The danger isn't always in recognizing who they are, it's in realizing too late how far you've let them in. I used to think boredom was the worst enemy a person could have. Growing up in Linton Hollow, Arkansas, I knew boredom like the back of my hand. The town was small enough that everyone knew the sound of everyone else's truck, small enough that any excitement got passed around and burned out in less than a week. My dad always said Linton Hollow was the kind of place people got stuck in, not the kind they dreamed about. I figured he was right, but when you're 19 and don't know anything else, stuck is just life. Our house sat right off the highway. It wasn't much. 2 bedrooms, chipped paint, a roof that groaned every time the wind shifted. Dad worked construction when he could find jobs, and when he couldn't, he'd park himself in his recliner with a cigarette in one hand and a beer in the other, eyes glued to whatever game was playing. Since Mom left years before, we didn't talk much. Silence was easier than opening wounds we couldn't close. The only thing that broke that silence for me was Zeke Harper. Zeke and I had been inseparable since middle school. We were the kind of kids who built forts out in the pine woods and rode our bikes until the tires were bare. Zeke had a spark I didn't. Reckless. Restless. He hated this town more than anyone I'd ever met, but instead of leaving, he kept trying to set fire to its monotony with pranks, dares, and trouble. His mom barely noticed. His dad was long gone, and Zeke lived in a sagging trailer 3 blocks from me. By 2011, we were on different tracks. I was clawing my way through community college classes, hoping they might lead somewhere. Zeke had already dropped out. He worked odd jobs at the gas station and spent nights smoking behind the dumpster or driving his beat-up Chevy down back roads with no destination. He liked to talk about bigger things, bigger places, bigger lives. But I think we both knew he didn't have a plan. One chilly October night, we were sitting on the hood of his Chevy outside the Dollar General, the hum of the neon sign buzzing above us. He lit a cigarette, took a drag, and grinned. You ever think about how dead this place is? He asked. All the time, I said. He leaned back, smoke curling around his head, something big, like Bigfoot. What if we gave him something to talk about? I laughed. Bigfoot? Seriously? Yeah, man, think about it. People here want to believe in something. Ghosts, monsters, whatever. You give them a glimpse, they'll eat it up. I thought he was joking, but a week later he showed up at my house holding a plastic bag with a mangy-looking Bigfoot costume inside. The mask was rubber, the fur was patchy, but at night it didn't look half bad. The first time we tried it, I drove down Miller Creek Road while Zeke sprinted across the headlights. For a second I almost believed it myself. Within days, blurry photos popped up on Facebook. Folks were buzzing. Saw something strange near Miller Creek. Some thought it was funny, others swore it was real. Zeke soaked up every comment like it was gasoline on a fire. At first I laughed with him. It felt harmless. Then the dog started turning up dead. Not just dead, mutilated. Torn open in ways no coyote could have managed. It was all over the local news. Parents kept their kids inside after dark. Suddenly, Bigfoot wasn't just a joke anymore. Zeke came to me pale and shaking. I saw it, he said. Saw what? Someone else. Same suit. Out there. It wasn't me, and it wasn't you. I wanted to tell him he was imagining things, but the fear in his eyes made me swallow the words. That was when the fun stopped, and something darker took its place. Zeke had always been a little wild, but after that night, something in him shifted. He stopped joking about Bigfoot, stopped bragging about fooling the town. Instead, he jumped at every sound, his eyes darting to the tree line like something was waiting for him there. One evening, I walked to his trailer and found him crouched on the porch, setting down a bag of raw meat. The smell hit me before I even spoke. "What the hell are you doing?" I asked. He startled, then looked up, his face pale. "Keeping it away." "Keeping what away? Strays?" He shook his head. "No, you know what I mean." I stared at the buzzing flies around the bag. Coyotes. "You're losing it, man. There's nothing out there," but Zeke's voice cracked. I saw it again. Taller than me, wearing the same damn fur. But the face, it wasn't right. It wasn't human. I didn't know what to say, so I didn't say anything. I left him there on that porch muttering to himself, shadows shifting behind his hollow eyes. That night my phone rang at 2 a.m. I answered groggily, and Zeke's voice came through ragged. "They're watching me," he whispered. "Who?" Silence. Then, "You'll see." 3 days later, his trailer caught fire. The firefighters called it a space heater accident. Folks nodded and moved on. But when I visited him at the hospital, his arms wrapped in gauze, he grabbed my wrist with a burned hand and hissed, "It wasn't an accident. It's out there, and it looks just like me." I left shaken, the words gnawing at me. That same week, my house was broken into. Nothing stolen. Drawers dumped, clothes scattered, cupboards opened. The sheriff said it was kids messing around. Dad shrugged it off. But I knew. I could feel the wrongness like a draft, slipping through the cracks. A month later, I woke to creaking floorboards at 2 a.m. At first, I thought it was Dad getting water, but when I opened my door, I froze. A tall, hunched figure stood in the hallway, hairy, breathing heavy. Its eyes glowed faintly in the dark. For a second, I thought it was the costume. Then it tilted its head in a disturbingly human way. "Zeke," I whispered, trembling. It didn't answer. It just backed into the shadows, step by jerky step until it was gone. By the time I turned on every light in the house, there was nothing. No footprints, no sign of a break-in, just the faint smell of smoke like burned wood. After that night, I stopped sleeping. Every creak in the house, every gust of wind outside, I heard it. I tried telling Dad, but he just grunted and told me to lay off the scary movies. I couldn't tell him that I hadn't watched a scary movie in months, that I was living one. I drove to the hospital to see Zeke again. He was half asleep, his bandaged arms twitching against the sheets. When I said his name, his eyes shot open, wide and desperate. "You saw it too, didn't you?" he rasped. I didn't answer. He nodded anyway. It wants us. It's not just playing anymore. What do you mean? I whispered. It knows your face now. Don't feed it. Don't talk to it. Don't even look at it if you can help it. His uncle came 2 days later and moved him to Missouri. He didn't say goodbye in person. Just left me a note. Don't look for it. It knows your face now. For weeks after, the town went quiet. No new dog killings, no strange sightings on Facebook. People chalked it up to hysteria. But at night, driving home, I'd catch a shadow lurching in the trees. Too tall to be a deer, too slow to be a hunter. Once I thought I saw its eyes in the ditch glowing like embers. Life tried to move on. Classes piled up. Dad grumbled about bills. Folks went back to fishing and gossiping and mowing their patchy yards. But the silence in the woods pressed harder than ever. One evening, heading home from campus, I found my front door wide open. Dad wasn't home yet. Inside, everything looked the same, except my room. Drawers dumped, sheets pulled off, closet door hanging open. Nothing missing, just like last time. I sat on the porch steps until Dad pulled up. When he asked what was wrong, I just shook my head. I couldn't explain something he'd never believe. Nights blurred together. Sometimes I'd wake to tapping on the window, soft but insistent. Other times I'd hear heavy breathing in the hallway. Always, there was the faint smell of smoke. I thought about running. But where would I go? Zeke had run, and it still haunted him. His words rang in my head. Don't feed it. Don't look for it. One night I drove aimlessly, ending up at Miller Creek. I parked and stared at the water, moonlight breaking across it. That's when I heard footsteps behind me. Slow, deliberate. When I turned, the woods were empty. Years have passed since then, but I never really left Linton Hollow. Dad got older, the house sagged further, and I stayed. People sometimes ask why. Truth is, I'm not sure. Maybe I'm waiting. Maybe I'm too scared to leave. Sometimes, late at night, I see shapes in the tree line when I drive home. Lurching, hunched, familiar. Sometimes I hear breathing just outside my window. Zeke never came back. I heard he moved again, farther north. I never called, never wrote. What would I say? That I still see it? That it still knows me? There are nights I sit on the porch and wonder if Zeke was the bad influence for starting it all, or if he was the only one who truly understood what we let in. Because whatever it is, it's still here, and it's still watching. Sometimes we think boredom is harmless, that chasing thrills or playing pranks will fill the emptiness of small-town life. But some doors, once opened, can't be closed again. Fear, once invited, doesn't leave. The lesson I carry from Linton Hollow is simple. Some stories aren't meant to be written by us, and some shadows are better left alone. I used to think moving to Las Vegas was a kind of restart button. I was 27, freshly burned out from freelancing in Los Angeles, and I wanted somewhere cheaper, somewhere alive, but not as crushing as LA had been. Downtown Vegas seemed like the answer. Fremont Street was noisy, colorful, and chaotic, but it carried an energy I liked. The lights at night made the cracked sidewalks glow, and the mix of tourists, locals, and drifters gave the city this odd heartbeat that kept me going when work felt stale. When Lucas and I found the loft, it felt like a miracle. It wasn't fancy, just a 2-bedroom with exposed brick, high ceilings, and creaky wooden floors. Rent was steep, but with our friends Leah and Travis splitting the bill, it was doable. They'd been our people for years, the kind of friends you didn't have to clean up for, the kind you could argue with and still end up on the couch together with takeout 10 minutes later. But life doesn't wait for comfort. Leah landed a job in Phoenix, something she couldn't turn down, and Travis, predictably, followed her. That left Lucas and me staring at the reality we couldn't afford to avoid. We couldn't cover the place on our own. Not without taking second jobs, and neither of us wanted to give it up. The loft had already started to feel like ours. So we turned to the modern-day lottery. Craigslist. I spent nights scrolling through endless messages, college kids looking for cheap rooms, older guys looking for something more than roommates, couples wanting temporary spots while they figured things out. Every interview felt like speed dating with higher stakes. Some people seemed too polished, others way too strange. Lucas and I would debrief at the diner afterward, whispering, "Could you live with them?" Most of the time the answer was no. Then came Kayla and Eric. We met them at a diner on Charleston Boulevard. Kayla was a fire hose of words. She told us within 10 minutes about her failed acting career, her amazing skincare side hustle, and her dream of starting a podcast. Her laugh was loud enough to turn heads. Eric, on the other hand, barely spoke. He sat across from me, pushing fries around his plate, and when he did look up, his eyes locked on mine with a kind of intensity that wasn't friendly. Afterward, Lucas nudged me. "They seem fine, babe. At least they have jobs." I wasn't convinced. Something about Eric made me want to get up and leave. But the rent deadline loomed, and practicality won over instinct. A week later, we handed Kayla and Eric the keys. For a while, it seemed fine. Kayla filled the apartment with scented candles, her voice echoing off the brick walls as she narrated her day. Eric disappeared often, sometimes for hours, sometimes overnight. It was unsettling but manageable. We told ourselves this was just the adjustment period, that roommates were never perfect. But soon, I started to notice the little things. The remote never where we left it. Dishes piling in the sink though Lucas and I hadn't cooked. And late at night when I'd get up for water, I'd hear Eric in the living room on the phone, his voice low, muttering things that made my stomach knot. One night I froze in the hallway when I heard him laugh quietly and say, "The balcony door. Easy. They don't even lock." He never knew I was listening. I told myself it was nothing, but deep down I felt the ground shift beneath me. At first, Lucas told me I was overreacting. People say weird stuff on the phone. He shrugged. Maybe he was joking. But the longer they stayed, the harder it was to ignore. Kayla treated the loft like a stage. She'd invite friends over without asking, blast music in the middle of the afternoon, and leave half-burnt candles scattered across the living room. More than once I came home to the smell of smoke because she'd fallen asleep with one lit. Eric was a different story. His silence wasn't shy, it was calculated. When he did speak, his words carried a mocking edge, like he enjoyed watching people squirm. Once, after I mentioned how late their friends stayed, he leaned close, his breath sour with beer, and whispered, "Relax, man. We're family now. You should loosen up." It wasn't what he said, it was how he said it, like a warning wrapped in a joke. Then the parties started. Not ours, theirs. We'd come home on a Friday night to find strangers spilling out onto the balcony, bottles clinking, the carpet sticky with beer. Eric thrived in it, roaming the room like he owned the place. Kayla laughed too loud, telling stories to people whose names I never caught. Lucas and I would retreat to our bedroom fuming, listening to the music thump through the wall. We argued constantly. Lucas wanted to confront them. I wanted to avoid the fight. But avoidance only worked until things started disappearing. First it was small, a set of vinyl records I'd been collecting since high school. I tore apart the living room looking for them, only to have Kayla shrug and say, "Maybe you misplaced them?" Lucas's headphones vanished next. He searched every drawer, every backpack, gone. Then came the final straw, my gaming console. I knew exactly where I'd left it, hooked up to the TV. One morning it was gone. Eric blamed random party guests, claiming someone must have walked off with it. His voice was calm, almost amused, like the theft was our fault for not watching our stuff. But I knew. One afternoon, heading down to the garage to swap laundry, I passed by Eric's beat-up silver Honda Civic. Something in me told me to look, and there they were, sitting in the back seat, my console, Lucas's headphones, stacked carelessly like junk. I snapped photos immediately, my hands trembling. That night, Lucas and I fought again. He wanted to confront Eric outright. I wanted to call the police. Both options felt dangerous. Eric wasn't the kind of guy you wanted cornered. We decided to wait until morning. I barely slept, listening for footsteps in the hallway, expecting Eric to barge in at any moment. At sunrise, I drove straight to the police station with the photos. The officer nodded politely, wrote down my statement, and promised to send someone by. I felt lighter as I left, like I'd finally taken control. But when the police came, Eric was gone. His clothes, his laptop, even the old Civic, vanished overnight. Kayla stood in the living room with wide eyes, playing dumb. "I don't know where he is," she insisted, her voice a mix of fear and performance. "We got into a fight. Maybe he left town." The police weren't convinced, but without him there, their hands were tied. They gave us a case number and left. Lucas and I didn't hesitate. We changed the locks that afternoon. We boxed up whatever Kayla and Eric had left behind and set it by the curb. Kayla cried, begged to stay, claimed she had nowhere to go. But my patience was gone. I told her she had 24 hours to leave. She left that night. For a while, it felt like we'd won. The loft was quiet again, ours again. But the peace was short-lived. It started 2 weeks later. I was taking out the trash when I saw it parked across the street. An old silver Honda Civic. The same dent on the rear bumper, the same faded paint. The windows were tinted, but I swear I saw him, Eric, leaning back in the driver's seat, watching. I froze, trash bag dangling from my hand, until a horn blared behind me, and the car drove off. When I told Lucas, he shook his head. "He's not coming back." "You're letting him live in your head. He's gone, Daniel," but I knew what I saw, and it wasn't just once. Some nights I'd look out the balcony and see headlights lingering at the curb. Not every night, not long enough to prove, but enough to feel hunted. I stopped sleeping well. Every creak of the loft made me flinch. I double-checked locks 3, 4 times. Lucas tried to be supportive, but I could see the exhaustion in his eyes. Living with Eric had damaged more than just our home. It had driven a wedge between us. One night I stood by the window at 2 a.m, staring at the street. The car wasn't there, but I still felt the weight of eyes on me. Months passed. The Civic stopped showing up. Or maybe I stopped looking. Lucas and I tried to rebuild our routine, but the loft never felt the same. Every shadow felt suspect. Every knock at the door made my heart race. Eventually, we moved. Not far, just to another apartment across town. Smaller, safer, less history. I told myself we were starting fresh again, but the truth lingered. The fear never completely left me. Even now, years later, I sometimes catch myself scanning parking lots for that silver Civic. I wonder where Eric went, if he found someone else to leech onto, to intimidate, to steal from. I wonder if he ever thinks about us. But mostly, I think about how easy it was to let him in. How desperation made us lower the walls we should have kept standing. The scariest part wasn't what he took from us. It was how quickly a stranger slipped into our lives, how easily we ignored the warning signs. The loft on Fremont Street taught me something I'll never forget. Desperation can blur our judgment, and when we ignore our instincts, we often invite danger closer than we realize. Protecting your space, your home, your peace, your boundaries, means listening to the small voice that warns you when something feels wrong. Because once you let the wrong person in, it's far harder to get them out. I should have left the locket in that box of broken memories. Even now, when I close my eyes, I can still feel its weight against my skin. Heavy, cold, possessive. My name is Sophie Callahan, and I used to believe I was the kind of woman who made rational choices, the kind who thought things through, listened to warnings, trusted her gut. That was before last fall, before the house, before the humming, before the locket changed everything. When my grandmother died, the responsibility of clearing out her old home in Asheville, North Carolina fell to me. My mother couldn't bear it, and my sister didn't offer. So after the funeral, I was the one who walked up the creaking steps of that colonial-style house on Waverly Hill Road with a ring of keys and a heart full of nostalgia. I'd adored that house as a child, but walking into it as an adult, I felt something different, like the air inside had been waiting, unmoved and stale, for someone to disturb it. The room still smelled like her lavender talcum powder and old paper. Dust covered everything. I spent the first day sorting through boxes, clothes, and an impossible amount of old photographs. My grandmother never threw a memory away, but she did grow strange toward the end. My mother had warned me, "Don't take anything from that house, Sophie." She wasn't herself near the end. She collected things she shouldn't have. I should have listened. It was late on the second night, my back sore and eyes burning, when I found the antique locket in a faded velvet pouch in her bedroom closet. Oval-shaped gold, engraved with swirling vine work and the initials MH. The clasp worked even after all those years. Inside was a sepia photograph of a young woman I didn't recognize. Soft curls, delicate features, and a distant smile that made me uneasy the longer I stared. Her beauty felt watchful, but it wasn't the picture that drew me in. It was the engraving, the craftsmanship, the way it seemed to hum warmth into my fingertips. By then I was exhausted, lonely, drunk on memories, so I slipped it into my pocket. My bad decision. My curse. That night at my grandmother's house, I dreamed of humming. A woman's voice, gentle and melodic, the same tune my grandmother used to hum on quiet mornings when she thought no one was listening. When I woke, the melody clung to me like cobweb. I drove home to my apartment in Asheville the next afternoon, giving the locket one more admiring glance before I hung it around my neck. It lay perfectly against my collarbone as though it had been made for me. I didn't think of the initials, or the warnings, or the humming dream. I only thought of how beautiful it looked. The first night I wore it, I woke suddenly, heart slamming in my chest, certain someone was beside my bed. The room was dark, but I could feel presence, breath, awareness, and beneath it, a whisper so close to my ear that I flinched. "Thank you." I snapped on the lamp. The room was empty. My apartment was silent except for the hum of the refrigerator down the hall. I told myself it was a dream and eventually fell back asleep. But the next morning I noticed something odd. The locket lay against my throat tighter than before, as though the chain had shrunk. When I tried to loosen it, it wouldn't budge. I told myself I was imagining it. Over the next week, little things started happening. Small, explainable things until they weren't. It started with the humming. I'd hear it faintly while folding laundry or brushing my teeth, like someone humming through a wall that wasn't there. Then the whispering began. A woman's voice, soft, familiar, always calling me the same name, Marigold. The first time, I laughed nervously and told myself I was overtired. By the fifth time, I wasn't laughing. I tried to ignore it, but my reflection started unsettling me more than the voice did. At odd moments, I'd catch glimpses of myself in a window or mirror and swear my expression wasn't mine. The tilt of my chin looked wrong. The part in my hair would be slightly off. Once, I saw a smile lingering on my face even after I knew I wasn't smiling. I stopped looking in mirrors for a few days after that. Still, I didn't take off the locket. I tried, but every time I touched the chain, I felt a choking pressure, like invisible fingers curling around my throat. Fear fed denial and denial fed compliance. I told no one. I didn't want to sound unhinged. By the 10th night, the whispering grew clearer. "You found me. I'm here. Wear me. We are the same." I stopped sleeping. I stopped eating much. My coworkers noticed, but I brushed them off, claiming migraines and stress. The voice filled the silence of my apartment until silence no longer existed. My own thoughts felt crowded, like I was sharing my mind with someone else. One night around 3 a.m., I found myself standing in the bathroom, staring into the mirror without remembering how I got there. My eyes looked different, warmer, older, smug. And then, through my own mouth, a whisper slipped out in a voice that was not mine. Marigold Hensley. The name hit me like ice water. I staggered back, shaking, and for the first time I tore through my laptop and started researching the initials on the locket. M.H. Marigold Hensley. Missing 1957, never found. Presumed dead, she was 22. Vanished after leaving a dance hall. The case went unsolved, no body, no closure. I slammed the laptop shut and gasped for air, clawing at the chain until my neck bruised. It wouldn't come off. I fell to the bathroom floor and sobbed until morning. That day at work, I felt her inside me. Not metaphorically, literally. Every decision, every gesture, every blink, she was there, learning me, adjusting me, testing control. I nearly crashed my car on the drive home because I felt my right hand try to jerk the steering wheel. I screamed at nothing, at everything. When I got home, I unplugged every mirror I could remove and draped towels over the rest. But I still felt watched. My own shadow felt foreign. The humming grew constant, like she was humming through me. That night, the voice became a command. Let me in. And that was the moment I realized. She didn't want to haunt me. She wanted to wear me. I barely slept for more than 20 minutes at a time after that, terrified that if I closed my eyes long enough, she'd take the rest of me. The locket felt heavier each day, the chain digging into my skin like a leash. I stopped going to work. I avoided calls from my sister. I avoided myself. Even my thoughts didn't feel private anymore. I'd think I need to run, and immediately I'd hear her answer, "Nowhere you go will be without me." By the second week, I couldn't tell if the house was colder or if my blood just ran thinner. I wore sweatshirts, socks, layered blankets, but still I shivered. The only warmth was the locket, pulsing faintly like a heartbeat against my chest. At random moments, my head would tilt on its own, as if someone else were testing the weight of my skull from inside. I felt drunk without drinking, unsteady on my own legs. On the 12th night, I woke up in the living room even though I remembered falling asleep in my bed. My body had moved without me. The coffee table was pushed aside. My laptop was open to an old newspaper archive, and there on the screen was Marigold Hensley's face, the same face from the locket's photograph. My hands were poised over the keyboard like I had been searching all night. I whispered, "What do you want from me?" The answer came in my own voice, curling out of my mouth against my will. "A life." I screamed until my throat burned. Then I made a plan. I would destroy the locket, burn it, crush it, whatever it took. I waited until morning, when sunlight filled the apartment, and stood in front of the fireplace with shaking hands. The locket lay in my palm, deceptively delicate. "This ends now," I whispered and threw it into the flames. For a moment, I felt victory. Relief washed over me in a hot rush of adrenaline as the gold began to glow red. But then the humming started again. Not faint, not distant, all-encompassing and inside my own skull. The fire roared unnaturally high. My vision blurred. My knees buckled. I hit the floor as heat seared through my veins, white-hot as though the metal were melting into my bloodstream. Then everything went silent. When I opened my eyes, the fire was nothing but calm, flickering embers. The chain lay charred on the hearth. The locket was gone. Not melted, not broken, gone. I stumbled to the bathroom and froze. The towels I'd hung over the mirror had fallen. In the glass stood my reflection, but not my expression. She smiled at me, not a hallucination, not a trick of light. She was in control. Even without the locket, "No," I whispered. "No, no, no." My reflection tilted her head, studying me with amused contempt before mouthing a single word. "Mine." I ran. Out of the bathroom. Out of the apartment. Down the stairwell. I didn't even grab shoes. I drove barefoot, heart pounding, vision swimming, with no destination except away. I drove until gas was low and my eyes blurred from tears. I ended up in a motel outside Greensboro. Numb, exhausted, unraveling. I locked the door, shut the curtains, and curled onto the bed, shaking. For a few hours she was silent. Long enough for me to believe maybe distance weakened her. I was wrong. At 2:49 a.m., I woke to the humming again, only this time it wasn't in my ears. It was coming from my own throat, humming while I slept. My body sat up slowly, without my permission. My hands moved like puppeted limbs. I screamed inside my skull, but no sound came out. She stood me in front of the mirror. I watched, trapped in my own eyes, as Marigold smiled through me. She lifted my hand and touched my cheek with reverence, admiring her new vessel. "You wore me," she whispered through my mouth. "And now I wear you." I don't remember leaving the motel. I don't remember the drive back. I only remember flashes, streetlights streaking through the windshield, my hands gripping the wheel while my mind pounded against invisible walls. When I fully came back to myself, I was home again. The apartment looked the same, but I didn't. My posture, my breath, my movements. She moved me with elegance I never had. I felt like a ghost inside my own skin. People noticed. My sister said my voice sounded lighter. My coworker said I seemed refreshed when I finally returned to work. Strangers smiled at me more, as though I emitted a charm that wasn't mine. They saw poise, confidence, golden warmth. But at night in the dark, I hear Sophie, me, screaming from somewhere deep inside. I pound at the mirror sometimes, watching my own reflection smile back, serene and composed, while I claw and wail behind my own eyes. I don't sleep. She sleeps, I don't speak. She speaks, I don't live. She lives. And I know now the locket never needed to stay intact. It was never just an object. It was a doorway, an invitation. I opened it, I wore it. I said yes before I even understood the question, so now I write this, not as a warning, because warnings don't matter. I wouldn't have listened to one anyway. I write it to remember that I was once here, that I was once Sophie Callahan, a woman with a life, a body, and a voice. Now, I am silence wearing skin, and sometimes late at night when she passes a mirror, she lets me surface just long enough to mouth the truth no one will ever hear. I should have left the locket in the box. I should have just said no. One stupid favor, that's all it was supposed to be. My name is Allie Greenwood, I'm 25. And if I had known what I was really letting into my life, I would have burned that crate in the parking lot and walked away without ever looking back. But I didn't. I said yes because I was lonely and desperate to matter to someone, even just one person. It started on a Thursday night at Hawthorne Medical Supply in Dayton, Ohio. The kind of fluorescent graveyard shift that makes you feel like the world forgot you existed. Tessa leaned over my desk, her perfume sugary and overwhelming, her voice soft like we were sharing a secret. Allie, can you do me a favor? Those big brown eyes of hers always made me feel seen. I craved that. So I said yes before I even asked what it was. When she showed up at my apartment with the crate, I hesitated for the first time. It was heavy, dark wood, old, with thin carved lines swirling around the surface like vines and symbols. No labels, no markings, just wrong. Tessa's hands shook as she set it down in my living room. Just for a week. Don't open it. Don't touch it. Don't ask questions. I laughed it off, pretending it was no big deal, even though a cold knot tightened in my stomach. That night, I stared at the crate from my couch while the TV played some forgettable sitcom. It looked out of place, like it didn't belong to this era, or to me, or to daylight. By midnight, I draped a blanket over it so I could sleep without its shape haunting the corner of my vision. I woke at 3:17 a.m. to a sound I couldn't place. A dragging scrape like wood being pulled across the floor. I shot up, heart pounding, only to find the crate exactly where I left it. The blanket had slid halfway off, like something underneath had pushed upward. I told myself it was just air pressure, or I'd tugged it in my sleep. The next morning before work, I caught myself just staring at it. My reflection in the TV screen looked pale and tense, my eyes flicking between the dark silhouette and its outline on the hardwood. I forced myself to leave, locking the door behind me like that would matter. At work, Tessa avoided me. No morning hello, no shared coffee break, no conspiratorial smiles. When I cornered her in the supply room, she flinched when I said the word crate. Her voice dropped to a whisper. It chose you, Allie. Just do what I asked, please. I tried to laugh it off, but she grabbed my wrist, nails digging in. I mean it. Don't let it out. That night, the noises grew worse. Scraping, tapping, a low, hollow thud every so often, as if something inside shifted its weight. I pressed my ear to the wood at one point. I wish I hadn't. There was breath inside. Slow, measured, real. I shoved the crate into the corner and propped a chair against it, as if a piece of furniture could stop whatever was inside. I barely slept. By the third night, the mirrors started fogging over. My bathroom mirror first, then the one on the back of my closet door, then the small makeup compact on my nightstand. I wiped them all clean, confused because the apartment wasn't humid and I hadn't showered. When I looked again, a shape hovered behind me. Tall, feminine, my outline, but wrong. I spun around. Nothing there. I splashed cold water on my face and forced myself to breathe. Lack of sleep, I told myself. Stress. I didn't believe it, but I needed a lie to cling to. The next morning, as I left for work, I noticed my bedroom mirror was fogged again. I wiped it with my sleeve and froze. My reflection wasn't aligned with me. Its hand lifted half a second after mine. Its head tilt lagged. And its eyes, not mine, too dark. Too eager, I dropped my purse. The reflection smiled. I did not. I backed out of the room and slammed the door shut. When I returned after work, the fog was gone and the reflection was mine again. But I couldn't forget that smile. I tried calling Tessa. She didn't pick up. I drove to her building. She refused to buzz me in. Through the crack of the intercom, she just kept repeating, "Don't open it. Don't open it." Like that was any kind of comfort. I slept with my lights on, or tried to. The crate creaked through the night, wood straining like something inside was pushing outward. I piled books on top of it, then my heaviest lamp, then a toolbox. The sounds didn't stop. On the fifth night, the power went out. Not the building, just my unit. I lit a candle, and the flame flickered violently, bending toward the crate like something drew the oxygen in its direction. I wrapped my arms around myself, whispering, "It's not real. I'm tired. I'm imagining this." Then came the whisper, not from the room, not from the hallway, from the mirror. My bathroom door stood slightly ajar. In the candlelight, I saw the reflection of my back in the mirror, even though I was facing it. The voice was soft, feminine, and not mine. "Allie, let me out. I can live better than you do." I stumbled backward, knocking over the candle. Darkness swallowed the room before I scrambled to relight it with shaking hands. The reflection was normal again, silent. But I knew. I felt it watching me, waiting. I couldn't stay there another minute. I grabbed my keys, threw on a jacket, and bolted out the door. I didn't sleep. I sat in my car outside the all-night diner until sunrise, drinking bitter coffee and trying to convince myself to go back. The next evening, I returned. The apartment smelled wrong, like damp stone and old breath. My picture frames were crooked. The crate sat dead center in the living room, even though I had shoved it against the wall before I left. The blanket that once covered it lay shredded on the floor. Before I could decide what to do, I caught movement in the black screen of the turned-off TV. My reflection stared back at me, but it wasn't copying me anymore. She raised her hand when I didn't. She stepped closer to the glass while I stayed frozen in place. Her lips moved. I heard the whisper without sound. "Trade." That's when the crate split. The wood groaned and splintered, a jagged crack ripping through its center. I ran for the door, fumbling with the lock, heart slamming, breath shallow. Behind me, glass rattled. Every mirror, every screen, every reflective surface buzzing like a swarm of angry insects. I didn't look back. I should have, but I didn't. I spent that night in my car again, parked behind my building, engine off, wrapped in a blanket that smelled like diner coffee and fear. I told myself that at sunrise I would call the police, tell them someone broke in, have them remove the crate, anything. But I never made the call, because Tessa showed up at dawn, pounding on my window, eyes wild and sleepless. "Get out of here," she whispered fiercely. "It's awake. It's hungry. And now it knows your name." I dragged her up to my apartment anyway, demanding answers. She paced my living room, avoiding the mirrors, avoiding the splintered remains of the crate. "I thought it would choose me," she muttered. "But it chose you. It always chooses the insecure ones, the lonely ones. They're easier to replace." "Replace?" I echoed, the word thick like tar. She finally met my eyes. "It lives in the reflection. It doesn't have a body of its own. It needs someone with cracks in their life. Someone whose face it can wear. Someone whose world it can take." My skin crawled. "Why me?" "You said yes," she whispered. Before I could scream at her, every mirror in the apartment fogged over at once. The bathroom, the closet, the picture frames, even the small shine on my microwave door. Tessa backed away, shaking her head. "It's already close. It wants to cross. Once it does, it doesn't go back." Then the whispers started again. My name, over and over, layered and overlapping like 100 versions of me speaking from under thick glass. I covered my ears. Tessa shouted, "Don't look at it." The apartment lights flickered and died. I stumbled in the dark, reaching for Tessa, but she'd already bolted for the door. She didn't even say goodbye. I was alone. Except I wasn't. The glass on the TV rippled like black water. My reflection stepped closer from the other side, her smile soft and patient. I backed away until my shoulders hit the wall. What do you want from me? My voice cracked in the dark. Her answer wasn't spoken. It arrived inside my skull like a thought that wasn't mine. Let me live. Let me be you. You don't even like your life. I'll do better with it. The images hit me fast, memories twisted slightly wrong. My reflection surrounded by my coworkers, laughing in a world where she belonged. My reflection hugging friends I no longer had. My reflection living inside my life more convincingly than I ever could. It was offering me the thing I wanted most, to be someone other than myself. I squeezed my eyes shut and screamed, "No!" When I opened them, she wasn't in the TV anymore. She was behind me, not in the room. In the glass of the window at my side, her face inches from mine, eyes too wide, grin too eager. I threw a lamp at the window. The glass shattered. For a heartbeat, I thought I'd won. But reflections don't disappear when glass breaks. They multiply. Every shard on the floor stared back at me, dozens of tiny versions of her whispering my name. I ran, out the door, down the hall, down the stairs. I didn't stop until I reached the street, gasping in the cold air of early morning. I didn't know where I was going, just away from any surface that could shine. But reflections are everywhere. Car windows, puddles, street signs. Every single one showed her, following, smiling, patient. That night I checked into a shabby motel off I-75. I smashed the room's mirror with the heel of my shoe and covered the TV with towels. I left the bathroom light off so I wouldn't see myself in the faucet or shower tiles. I slept in bursts, waking at every sound, every flicker of shadow. I lasted 3 days. On the 4th night, I made the mistake of looking into the black screen of my phone before I powered it down. Just a glance. Less than a second, she was there. Closer than before. And this time, her hand pressed against the inside of the screen, like she'd found a thinner spot in the barrier. I hurled the phone across the room and started to cry. I couldn't run forever, I knew it. She knew it. That same night, the motel TV clicked on by itself. Static first, then my voice whispering from inside, "Trade." I approached slowly, trembling. "What happens to me if I say yes?" I asked. For the first time, she answered aloud through the speaker. My own voice twisted just enough to chill me. "You won't feel anything at all. No fear, no loneliness, no pain. You'll just stop. No more anxiety, no more invisibility, no more disappointing everyone, including myself." The temptation slid through me like warm syrup. That scared me more than anything else. I ran again. Now I'm here, writing this by hand in another cheap motel, moving from town to town, avoiding mirrors, avoiding screens, avoiding water that can reflect my face. I break every piece of glass I find. I sleep in windowless rooms. I don't talk to anyone for long. I can't risk the shine in their eyeglasses or the reflection in a car door when we stand outside. But I know the truth. Reflections are patient. One day I'll slip. I'll glance at a dark window or at the surface of a spoon or at the screen of a phone I forgot to cover. She'll be there. And when I do slip, when I do look, she'll finally take my place. I feel her every time I blink now, like she's just behind my eyes, waiting for the smallest crack to open. So if you ever see me, really see me, look twice, because it might not be me anymore. And if you ever find a wooden crate carved with symbols and vines, don't be like I was. Don't say yes. Don't do the favor. Run. I never should have texted him that night. Even now, sitting here with every light in my apartment burning like a desperate prayer, I can't understand what kind of loneliness or weakness or insanity crawled into me at 2:03 a.m. and convinced me it was a good idea. 3 months of silence, 3 months of ripping myself away from him stitch by stitch until I could breathe again. And then, with one pathetic impulse, I unraveled it all. I told myself it was closure. I told myself it would help me sleep. I told myself I needed to apologize. But the truth is simpler, uglier. I just missed the way being wanted used to feel. That night, Pasadena was wrapped in a damp yellow haze, the kind that sticks to street lamps and makes the world look like it's stained. I was alone in my studio apartment, red wine half drunk, heart full of noises I didn't want to hear, and I typed out a message to Adrian. A long, humiliating apology. I read it 3 times knowing I shouldn't send it, knowing it would undo months of therapy and distance and progress. Then my thumb betrayed me and I hit send. He replied instantly, "I miss you too." Come outside, it didn't feel romantic. It didn't feel comforting. It felt wrong, like someone standing too close, like breath on the back of your neck when you know you're alone. But I went. Some part of me still obeyed him even now. I stepped outside beneath that buzzing street lamp behind my apartment and saw nothing. Empty pavement. A silver trash bin tipped on its side. A cat darting under a car. I felt stupid. Then my phone buzzed again. "You look the same. Stay right there." Something inside me snapped. I ran. I bolted back inside, shaking so hard my keys rattled on the floor. I didn't sleep. I didn't blink. I stared at that last message until the sun crawled over the Pasadena skyline, and the world went from nightmare dark to indifferent gray. I finally turned on the TV, needing noise. That's when I saw the headline. Local man found dead in apartment. Time of death, Jan 17, 9:40 p.m. Adrian. My Adrian, dead hours before my message. I laughed out loud at first, a choked, hysterical sound. It had to be a mistake. Wrong Adrian. Wrong photo. Wrong something. But it wasn't. Same face. Same jawline. Same brown eyes I once memorized. The world tilted. I felt like I was watching myself from far away. The room smelled sour, metallic, like bad wiring or fear. I tried to explain it away. Delayed texts, spoofed number, glitch, grief hallucination. I clung to anything that wasn't the truth forming at the edges of my mind. I blocked the number. I deleted the thread. I turned off my phone, but that night, exactly 2:03 a.m., my powered-off phone lit up. "Why did you run?" The message wasn't from a number. No contact photo. No thread history. Just words, floating, waiting. I didn't respond. I cried instead, silent and animal-like, curled on my kitchen floor with my back against the cabinet as if something were on the other side of the room watching me. The next few nights blurred. I avoided sleep. I avoided people. I avoided mirrors. My reflection unnerved me. My eyes looked too wide, too hunted. I wandered between my couch and my bed like a ghost, jumping at sounds in the hallway. Pasadena always hums at night. Traffic, dogs, distant music. But now every noise sounded intentional. Like footsteps. Like someone pacing. Like someone waiting. On the 5th night, the text was longer. We weren't finished. You reached out. You asked me back. I threw the phone. It hit the wall, battery skittering across the hardwood. For a moment, I felt triumphant, as if I'd broken the connection. But when I picked it up, before I even reattached the battery, the screen glowed to life. Don't ignore me, Mira. How do you rationalize the impossible without losing your mind? I told myself I was grieving, traumatized, depressed. I told myself I needed sleep, food, sunlight. I told myself it was PTSD from the relationship, and I was relapsing into old mental habits. But the text didn't stop. Every night at 2:03 a.m., a new message. Let me in. You owe me a life for a life. You called me back. I stopped leaving the apartment except for work. And even there, my co-workers' voices sounded distant, warped, underwater. I jumped whenever someone said my name. I found myself staring at men on the street, searching for Adrian's face, certain I'd see him in a crowd or reflected in a window, smiling like nothing had happened. One night, exhausted and shaking, I texted back, "You're not real. You're dead. Stop." 3 dots appeared, typing. My lungs shrank. Then why did you open the door for me? I hadn't opened any door. But the second I read those words, I smelled the cold. That sharp, metallic winter smell drifted through my apartment, even though every window was shut. My hands went numb. I grabbed a knife from the kitchen drawer and walked through each room. Bathroom, closet, pantry, checking every corner, every shadow. Nothing. No one. Just my heartbeat echoing in my skull. That was part 1 of me. The version still pretending there might be a reasonable explanation. The night I heard footsteps in my living room. Soft, slow. Not mine. I froze in bed, my body electric with dread. I didn't move, didn't breathe, didn't even blink. The air felt weighted like the room itself was leaning toward me. A floorboard creaked. Then another. The steps moved closer. My vision fuzzed at the edges, blackening. When I finally sat up, knife in hand, the footsteps stopped. Silence swallowed everything. My phone buzzed. 3 a.m. You look scared. My hand trembled so hard I almost dropped the knife. I whispered into the empty room. What do you want? The reply came instantly. You. The days that followed felt less like living and more like rotting. Food went bad in my fridge. Dishes piled up. My plants wilted and died. I kept every light on 24/7. I stopped going to work. I stopped answering calls from friends. The texts controlled my schedule. My pulse, my oxygen. Some nights Adrian was loving. Some nights cruel. Some nights accusatory. Some nights pleading. That was the worst, when he sounded like the old hymn. When his words felt warm. When the idea of being wanted didn't feel like a threat. I hated myself for missing him. For craving the voice that once broke me. For wondering just once or twice if letting go had been the real mistake. Last night, everything changed. At 2:03 a.m., my phone didn't buzz, it rang. The sound sliced through my apartment, drilling into my bones. I stared at the screen, no number. No caller ID, just the word, him. I answered. Silence. Then breathing. Slow, deep, familiar. My chest tightened until I couldn't inhale. My voice came out broken and small. You're not real. The breathing got louder, closer, like the phone speaker wasn't the source at all, but maybe the room itself. I dropped the phone. It hit the floor and the breathing continued right beside my ear. I ran. I don't remember grabbing my keys. I don't remember leaving my apartment. I only remember ending up in my car, barefoot, shaking, parked in some empty lot near the Rose Bowl, watching the sky lighten from black to blue to gray. I stayed until morning. Then I came back here, which brings me to now, every light on, every shadow watched, knife beside me, heart like a trapped animal. I keep telling myself it's psychological. Trauma, guilt, a nervous breakdown. I could call someone. I could check myself in. I could choose to live, but the sun is gone again, and it's 2:03 a.m. My phone is vibrating, and vibrating, and vibrating. One message, then another, then another. The screen keeps lighting up, casting flashing white pulses across my walls like lightning. I don't want to look. I don't. But my eyes are already moving, slow and helpless. I pick up the phone. All the messages are the same. I'm outside again. Don't run this time. There's breathing on the other side of my door. And now someone is turning the doorknob. I should have never answered her. Even now, when the nights stretch long and the wind snakes through the gaps in my dorm window, I can still hear Ivy's voice under it. Thin, wet, and patient. But on that night, I was still a girl who believed closure was something you could summon, not something that hunts you. My name is Lena Forrester, and everything I'm about to relive began in room 406 of Benton Hall, on the north edge of Hollow Ridge University, where the red brick walls sweat in the rain and the pipes click all night like teeth. It was October, the 1-year mark of Ivy's death, the night I made the worst decision of my life. The campus was dark when I crossed the quad, leaves scraping in small swarms across the pavement. Storm clouds sat bruised over the Vermont tree line. I remember thinking the air felt heavy, like I was walking into a room someone had just been crying in. My shoes splashed through shallow puddles left by the afternoon storms, and with every step I tried to swallow down the tightness in my throat. I had promised myself I'd be okay by now, that losing Ivy wouldn't define me, that the nightmares of her blue lips and tangled hair would fade. They didn't. I pushed into Benton Hall, the door groaning like it hadn't been opened in years instead of hours. The stairwell lights flickered above me, humming their tired electric sighs. I climbed to the 4th floor, the scent of old rain-soaked carpet rising from each landing. When I reached 406, Mia swung the door open, her blonde ponytail whipping. "Finally," she whispered. Lex almost chickened out. "Get in before she bails again." Inside, a single circle of candles glowed on the floor. Lex sat cross-legged beside Tyler, both of them looking unnaturally excited. A spirit board lay in the center, its letters painted in gold. I hated that board on sight. It looked too used, too eager. "I still don't know why we're doing this," I muttered, dropping to my knees beside Mia. "Closure is therapy, not..." "Whatever this is," Mia softened. "I know, but you said you wished you'd told Ivy goodbye. Maybe this helps." "One night." "That's it," Tyler grinned. "It'll be fun." Midnight seance. Room 406, spooky as hell, Lex smirked. "And if your sister says hi, maybe she can tell us my chem grade." I glared and she shrank a little, but not enough for my liking. Mia squeezed my fingers. "We're here for you. Just breathe." The candles flickered. Wind moaned against the glass. And then we began. We joined hands. Tyler read from a printout he said he found online. Some ritual about thinning the veil, calling to lost voices, inviting them close. It felt like trespassing. Still, when Mia mouthed ready, I nodded. "I wanted Ivy, just one word." "Just one sign." "Lena," Tyler whispered. "Say her name." I swallowed, heartbeat kicking at my ribs. "Ivy, if you can hear me." I'm here." The silence held. My palms dampened. Then, all at once, the candles bent inward, their flames leaning toward me. Not the board. Not the circle. Me, Tyler laughed nervously. "Draft, right?" Old windows, but there was no draft. The room felt sealed. In fact, it felt warm, like a mouth breathing on my neck. I squeezed Mia's hand so hard she winced. The planchette shifted. Slowly. Smoothly. Like a fingertip guiding it. L'ennemi breath locked. Mia gasped. Lex's smile collapsed. Tyler looked like he'd been slapped. The planchette slid again. You again. Lead a final shift. Mia jerked her hands away. "Nope, no, we're done." "That's messed up." But Tyler grabbed her wrist. "We can't stop mid-session," Lex whispered. "Ask her again." Just to be sure, I didn't want to. My pulse thrashed. I could taste copper. But something in the room leaned toward me, expectant, hungry. "What? What do you want?" I whispered. The planchette shot to a single word, TRADE. The candles snapped out, plunging us into black. Tyler screamed. Lex sobbed. Mia fumbled for her phone light, and when it flared on, the board was upside down. The planchette rested on goodbye. No one spoke for a full minute. When we finally left, the hallway lights buzzed like angry hornets. I walked back through the storm alone. Rain plastered my hair to my face and slid down my neck like fingers. In the glass doors of the dorm, I caught my reflection, and for a split second it did not move with me. Its mouth lagged open, still forming a word mine had already finished. I told myself I imagined it. Grief, trauma, suggestion, candles, nerves. But when I entered my room, I stopped cold. Water pooled at the foot of my bed. Not spilled water. Not rain from my coat. Footprints. Wet, bare, small, ivy-sized, leading from my closet to my pillow, where my head would rest. I didn't sleep. Not that night. Not really after that either. The next day, Mia avoided me. Tyler wouldn't answer texts. Lex pretended nothing happened, but her eyes twitched every time someone said my sister's name. I went to class numb, drowning in coffee and denial. I told myself I needed answers, and that I would never go near that board again. But that night, as I lay awake, the pipes began to drip. Drip, drip, drip. Steady. Too steady. I checked the sink. Dry, the shower, dry, the ceiling, dry. The sound was coming from under my bed. I crouched. There was a spreading puddle. Cold. Dark. And beneath that slow ripple of water, soaking footsteps, pacing back and forth, I dared to whisper her name. Ivy? The footsteps stopped. Something lifted my blanket, slowly like a cat nosing its way inside. I screamed and bolted upright. My roommate flicked on the light, cursing. The water, the footsteps, the blanket gone. Dry carpet. Normal room. Perfectly unchanged. She swore I'd been dreaming. I almost believed her. Until morning. Because at 6:42 a.m., campus police fished Mia's shoes out of Carter Lake. No Mia, just her shoes. Laces knotted neatly, just like Ivy's, and written in wet algae across the leather "TRADE by sunset." I couldn't breathe without shaking. Ivy was gone. Mia was gone. And I knew Benton Hall still had its claws in me. I went back. The hallways were too quiet. Room 406 stood open. Candles melted to wax puddles. The board waited on the floor like it had known I would return. "I don't want this," I whispered. The planchette slid without hands. ESYOUD. My knees buckled as the lights exploded overhead, raining glass. The window burst, wind howling in. And behind me, warm breath, wet and earthy, lake-smelling, finish it. I ran. But I swear I felt her fingers brush my wrist before I escaped. I barely remember getting back to my dorm. Just rain, just wind. Just my name echoing behind me in a voice that was Ivy's and not Ivy's, familiar and wrong. That night, As I curled against the wall, hugging my knees, I realized the truth. Ivy didn't drown alone, she drowned angry, and she wasn't done. I barely slept the night after Mia vanished. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard water lapping at my ear, soft and rhythmic, like I was lying half submerged at the edge of Carter Lake. By morning, I could smell algae on my sheets. My roommate swore she couldn't smell a thing, but the scent clung to me, skin, hair, clothes, as if someone had dragged me through the lake in my sleep. I showered twice. It didn't help. By noon, the whispers began. They followed me across campus, through the cafeteria line, down the English hall, into the library stacks. Always behind me, always breath close, Lena. Trade. Finish. Each syllable sounded bloated, waterlogged, like vocal cords softened and ruined by drowning. I tried drowning them out with music, with noise, with denial. None of it mattered. My grief had become a doorway, and Ivy knew how to walk through it. That night, I found myself standing at Carter Lake. I didn't remember walking there. Cold mud sucked at my shoes. The moon glazed the surface of the lake, turning it into a wide, trembling pupil. The wind hissed through the reeds, but beneath it I heard something else, breathing. A second set. Wet. Ragged. Filled with bubbles that never rose. I stepped back, heart rattling. The lake sloshed in gentle waves, and with each one, something surfaced in my memory. Something I had shoved so deep I'd convinced myself it wasn't real. Ivy calling my name, her hand slipping from mine, the moment I let go. I staggered away from the shoreline. Before I knew it, I was running. Back to Benton Hall, back to room 406. The board was still there, waiting for me on the floor, candles arranged like a patient mouth of teeth. I dropped to my knees, shaking so hard I could barely breathe. "This is my fault," I whispered. "What do you want from me?" The planchette didn't slide this time, it snapped. The wood split clean in half, like something had slammed a fist onto it. Then the candles bloomed with tall, violent flames. The walls groaned, and water began dripping from the ceiling. Slow drops at first, then a steady pour soaking my hair, my shoulders, the board. But I didn't move. I just sat there, drenched and trembling, staring at the ruined planchette. The flames guttered. The water stopped. The room went still, and then Ivy spoke. Not through the board. Not through memory. Through me. Her voice bloomed inside my skull, cold and hollow, but thick with clarity. "You let go." I clutched my head. "I was trying to pull you up. You let go." "No, I slipped." "You let go." Tears mixed with lake-smelling water. I was scared. "You were pulling me in." For a moment there was silence. Then Ivy's voice softened with a grief so familiar it tore me open. "I was your sister." Something in me broke. I stood on shaking legs. "Then take me. Is that what you want? You took Mia. You want me instead? Fine. Just stop haunting me." The candles went out, but the darkness answered. "I want you to finish." My breath hitched. "Finish what?" No response, just the sound of dripping, drip, drip, drip. But this time it wasn't coming from the ceiling. It was coming from the hallway. I stepped out. A trail of water soaked the carpet leading away from room 406, dark, reflective, like a mirror shattered into 1,000 shifting puddles. My feet followed without asking permission, like I was being pulled by an undertow I couldn't fight. The trail ended at the stairwell. Inside, the walls were smeared with lakeweed. The air smelled like rot. Beneath the stairs, I heard something dragging. I leaned over the railing. A shape moved in the dark, wet hair, bare feet, skin the color of old moonlight. Ivy. She stood at the bottom landing, chin tucked, hair veiling her face. Water dripped from her fingertips, one drop at a time, steady as a ticking clock. "Ivy?" I whispered. Her head twitched. Then she looked up, my lungs seized. Her eyes were gone, emptied, flooded. Pupils washed away until only pale, swollen whites stared back at me. Mud streaked her cheeks. Her jaw hung at an angle that no living girl could hold. She reached for me, I ran. I don't remember getting outside. I don't remember crossing the quad. I just remember sunlight bursting through the clouds as I threw myself through the dorm doors, collapsing by the elevator, gasping for air that felt too thin to breathe. I barricaded myself in my room until nightfall. My roommate was gone for the weekend, thank God, so no one saw me unravel. I shoved towels under the door. I unplugged the lamp because the humming reminded me of her voice. I curled on the floor and whispered to no one, but Ivy didn't need the door. At 3:11 a.m., I heard the sink turn on. A thin stream of water spilled, then stopped, then spilled again, like fingers toying with the faucet handle. When I dared look, the bathroom light was off, but something stood in the doorway. A faint outline, shoulders, hair, dripping. I squeezed my eyes shut and whispered, "She isn't there, she isn't there, she isn't." The shower curtain rings screeched. One by one, then Lena. I ran again, but this time not to escape, this time to end it. I raced through the freezing quad, across the street, down the long dirt path to Carter Lake. The wind clawed my face. The trees hissed overhead. The moon lit the surface of the water like a silver blade. "I'm here," I screamed. "I'm here!" "No more games?" The lake answered with a ripple, not from wind, from something rising. The surface bulged, split, and Ivy's face emerged, gray, bloated, hair fanning like black weeds beneath the surface. Her eyes rolled open, solid white. Her mouth sank open wider and wider until it shouldn't have been possible. I waded in. Cold knifed up my spine, but I didn't stop. The water reached my waist, my ribs, my shoulders. Ivy floated closer, her face inches from mine, breath reeking of lake mud and autumn rot. "Trade," she gurgled. "I accept," I whispered. Her hands seized my arms, cold as winter stone. The lake swallowed us both. I don't remember screaming. I don't remember drowning. I just remember darkness, pressure, cold, and Ivy's grip, holding me in the dark like we were 7 again, hiding under blankets with flashlights and secrets. When I woke on the shore at dawn, I was alone, alive, dry breathing, but I knew immediately I wasn't free, because the footprints leading out of the lake, there were 2 sets and only one was mine. Now I sit in my dorm room writing this, towels shoved under the door. The ceiling stains have returned, blooming into shapes that spell her name in long, dripping strokes. In every mirror, my reflection is half a second late, as though something stands just behind my eyes, waiting for its turn. Ivy doesn't whisper anymore. She doesn't need to. She's inside now, and every night, I feel her at the edges of my thoughts, humming that drowned little tune, waiting for me to finish what I started. I don't know how long I have before she takes the rest, but I know this much. I should have never called her back. Because Ivy isn't dead. She's patient. I thought Gerson was finally going to ask me to be his girlfriend. After 8 months of no labels, he'd finally invited me on a weekend trip. Just the 2 of us into the Cascade Mountains. It sounded perfect. Quiet air, pine trees, the smell of damp soil. But even as I replayed his words in my head, "You'll see, babe. It's a surprise." Something about his tone lingered in me like static, impossible to tune out. The drive up felt too long. He barely spoke, and when he did, it was short, clipped. He kept checking the rearview mirror, his jaw flexing. I tried to make small talk, songs, road trip snacks, stupid jokes, but he wasn't biting. His hands were steady on the wheel, his eyes on the road, and his silence started to fill the car like fog. We reached the campsite just before sunset. A cliff overlooked a river below, swollen and glittering, the current curling white around black boulders. The air smelled like whetstone and pine needles. It should have felt peaceful. Instead, I couldn't shake the sense that we'd gone somewhere we weren't supposed to. He unpacked efficiently, tent, cooler, sleeping bags, all laid out with military precision. I teased him for it. "What, you practicing for a camping Olympics?" He smiled faintly, not meeting my eyes. Then he took out a can of bear spray. "Bought it special," he said. "Stuff strong enough to drop a grizzly." "Good," I said, forcing a laugh. "Guess I'm safe with you." He didn't answer. Just began spraying the perimeter of our tent. I watched the mist drift in the amber light, thin as breath. It caught my arm, and for a second it burned, sharp chemical, a cold fire against my skin. "Hey, careful," I said, rubbing at it. "Sorry," he murmured, not looking up. Didn't mean to. Dinner was awkward. The fire popped and hissed, throwing sparks that danced into the dark. He sat across from me, face flickering orange, eyes hollowed by shadow. I told him about a coworker's engagement, how I'd assumed we might be next. He just stared into the flames and said, "You could say that, it should have been funny." It wasn't. That night I lay awake beside him, listening to the trees whisper in the wind. His breathing stayed slow, even, almost rehearsed. I couldn't sleep. The forest felt alive around us, watching. Once I thought I saw movement beyond the tent flap, a shape in the dark, but it might have just been my reflection in the nylon. When I woke, morning light seeped through the fabric, thin, gray, disorienting. The sleeping bag beside me was empty. The fire was out. The car keys, the food, his pack, all gone. Only one thing remained. The can of bear spray lying next to my pillow. Empty. For a long moment I just sat there, staring. The forest hummed with insects, indifferent. My first thought was, he's playing some kind of prank. That's what Gerson did, tested people, saw how far he could push before they cracked. I waited. An hour passed, 2. My stomach gnawed at itself. I called his name until my voice went hoarse. Nothing. When I finally unzipped the tent to step outside, a smell hit me. Sickly sweet, metallic, like rot and rust mixed together. The ground was scattered with dark stains near the fire pit, half soaked into the dirt. I crouched down, touched one, sticky. My heart began to thud hard enough to shake my vision. I told myself it was animal blood. Maybe he'd gone hunting, or maybe it was something he'd spilled. But then I noticed the footprints leading away from camp, deep, uneven, dragging, and beside them something else. Claw marks, wide and deep, gouged into the soil. The trees pressed closer the farther I walked. The world felt muted except for my breathing. Every step echoed in the hollow of my chest. I called again, voice breaking this time. "Gerson." No answer, just the creak of branches and the distant rush of water. By afternoon, I'd stopped yelling. I just walked. My throat ached, my lips split from dryness. I found a crushed water bottle near a fallen log, his brand, and next to it a torn scrap of map, half-soaked, smeared with dirt. His handwriting was faint but legible. Cave, 1 mile east. Cave. What cave? I didn't know what I was chasing anymore. Help, revenge, answers. But my skin burned where the bear spray had touched me, and my thoughts started to spin in circles. He sprayed it for the bears. He said it would keep them away. But what if it was to bring them closer? I don't remember falling. 1 minute I was walking. The next the ground vanished and I was tumbling, scraping down an embankment, clutching at roots that tore loose in my hands. I hit something wet, the shock stealing my breath. The river. The current dragged me under once, twice, before spitting me against the bank. When I crawled out, my shoulder was bleeding. I couldn't tell from what, stone, branch, maybe claws. The forest above seemed to tilt, dark shapes moving between the trees. Watching. Waiting. I screamed his name one last time. And that's when I heard it, a growl, deep guttural, close. It came from behind me, a sound that vibrated through the bones. I turned and froze. A bear stood at the tree line, massive and ragged, its fur matted with something dark. Its eyes reflected gold in the fading light. It sniffed the air, stepped forward. I didn't move. Couldn't. My mind replayed Gerson's voice. "You'll see." The smell hit me next. Metallic sweetness, like the air before a lightning strike. The same scent clung to my clothes, my skin. The bear knew it too. It bared its teeth, a low rumble building in its chest. I ran. Branches whipped my face, my shoulder screamed with pain, but I ran until my lungs burned. The sound of pursuit followed, thuds, cracking wood, breath that wasn't mine. When I glanced back, the forest blurred. Something darker moved between the trunks, impossibly fast. I tripped on a root, went down hard. My vision exploded with stars. By the time I crawled to my feet, it was gone. Silence. Only the pulse in my ears. I stumbled until I found the tent again. Half collapsed, fabric flapping weakly. My hands shook as I grabbed my phone from my bag. No signal, 2% battery. The screen flickered, then died. The bear spray lay where I'd left it, empty, glinting in the dirt. My eyes burned, my throat raw. I screamed until my voice broke, the sound scattering into the trees, and then I saw it. Something shining near the fire pit. I crouched. It was a piece of paper folded neatly, almost lovingly. Gerson's handwriting. You'll see it too. The words didn't make sense at first. Then they did. He hadn't planned to hurt me directly. He'd planned to leave me here with the scent that drove bears wild, not away. That bear spray he'd bought wasn't repellent. It was attractant, maybe mixed, maybe tampered with. I didn't know, but the smell clung to me now like second skin. The world tilted. A branch cracked behind me, deliberate this time. I turned slowly. The bear stood again, closer than before, half in shadow. I could see the scar across its muzzle, the way its sides heaved with each breath. The earth vibrated when it stepped forward. I backed away, tripped on the edge of the tent, fell hard. The sky above was turning the color of rust. For a heartbeat, I thought of every small betrayal I'd ignored. His texts to other women, his casual cruelties, the way he once laughed when I cried. I'd always told myself he was damaged, not dangerous. Now I saw the truth. He'd left me as bait. The bear lunged. The air filled with sound, snarls, my own scream, the tearing of fabric and flesh. Pain flooded everything. I rolled, kicked, clawed at the ground, somehow breaking free long enough to run blind through the trees. The world became flashes, bark, blood, river, rock. I don't remember hitting the edge. Only the sensation of falling, air screaming past, cold water swallowing me whole. When I opened my eyes again, it was daylight. A ceiling above me, white and humming. My body felt stitched together wrong. Tubes in my arms, machines whispering nearby. A nurse smiled when she saw I was awake. "You're lucky," she said softly. "2 hikers found you near the river. You were barely breathing." Her words barely touched me. I could still hear the forest, still smell that sweetness. Later, a sheriff came. A heavy man with kind eyes. He sat by the bed, hat in his hands. "Ma'am," he began, "I'm sorry to tell you, your friend didn't make it. We found him about a mile from your site. Looked like the same bear got him." I stared at him, numb. "The same bear," I repeated. He nodded. "Guess it circled back." When he left, I looked down at my hands. The nurses had scrubbed them clean, but I could still see the stains beneath the nails, the scratches, the proof that something primal had passed between me and the woods, and that I was never meant to walk away. They gave me my belongings in a plastic bag, wallet, phone, and that note, the one written in his careful looping script. "You'll see it too." I read it until the letters blurred. Now, at night, I leave the window open. I tell myself it's for the fresh air, but sometimes when the wind moves through the trees outside, I catch a faint trace of that metallic sweetness. I freeze, every nerve waiting. The doctors say I have survivor's guilt, maybe, but sometimes, just before sleep, I dream I'm still out there alone. The forest whispering, the tent flap open, the air sharp and waiting. And I wonder if Gerson saw what I saw before it took him, or if it was always meant to find me first. I thought Gerson was finally going to ask me to be his girlfriend. After 8 months of no labels, he'd finally invited me on a weekend trip, just the 2 of us into the Cascade Mountains. It sounded perfect. Quiet air, pine trees, the smell of damp soil. But even as I replayed his words in my head, "You'll see, babe. It's a surprise." Something about his tone lingered in me like static, impossible to tune out. The drive up felt too long. He barely spoke, and when he did, it was short, clipped. He kept checking the rearview mirror, his jaw flexing. I tried to make small talk, songs, road trip snacks, stupid jokes, but he wasn't biting. His hands were steady on the wheel, his eyes on the road, and his silence started to fill the car like fog. We reached the campsite just before sunset. A cliff overlooked a river below, swollen and glittering, the current curling white around black boulders. The air smelled like whetstone and pine needles. It should have felt peaceful. Instead, I couldn't shake the sense that we'd gone somewhere we weren't supposed to. He unpacked efficiently, tent, cooler, sleeping bags, all laid out with military precision. I teased him for it. "What, you practicing for a camping Olympics?" He smiled faintly, not meeting my eyes. Then he took out a can of bear spray. "Bought it special," he said. "Stuff strong enough to drop a grizzly." "Good," I said, forcing a laugh. "Guess I'm safe with you." He didn't answer. Just began spraying the perimeter of our tent. I watched the mist drift in the amber light, thin as breath. It caught my arm, and for a second it burned, sharp chemical, a cold fire against my skin. "Hey, careful," I said, rubbing at it. "Sorry," he murmured, not looking up. "Didn't mean to." Dinner was awkward. The fire popped and hissed, throwing sparks that danced into the dark. He sat across from me, face flickering orange, eyes hollowed by shadow. I told him about a coworker's engagement, how I'd assumed we might be next. He just stared into the flames and said, "You could say that, it should have been funny." It wasn't. That night I lay awake beside him, listening to the trees whisper in the wind. His breathing stayed slow, even almost rehearsed. I couldn't sleep. The forest felt alive around us, watching. Once I thought I saw movement beyond the tent flap, a shape in the dark, but it might have just been my reflection in the nylon. When I woke, morning light seeped through the fabric, thin, gray, disorienting. The sleeping bag beside me was empty. The fire was out. The car keys, the food, his pack, all gone. Only one thing remained. The can of bear spray lying next to my pillow. Empty. For a long moment I just sat there, staring. The forest hummed with insects, indifferent. My first thought was, he's playing some kind of prank. That's what Gerson did, tested people, saw how far he could push before they cracked. I waited. An hour passed, 2. My stomach gnawed at itself. I called his name until my voice went hoarse. Nothing. When I finally unzipped the tent to step outside, a smell hit me. Sickly sweet, metallic, like rot and rust mixed together. The ground was scattered with dark stains near the fire pit, half soaked into the dirt. I crouched down, touched one, sticky. My heart began to thud hard enough to shake my vision. I told myself it was animal blood. Maybe he'd gone hunting, or maybe it was something he'd spilled. But then I noticed the footprints leading away from camp, deep, uneven, dragging, and beside them something else. Claw marks, wide and deep, gouged into the soil. The trees pressed closer the farther I walked. The world felt muted except for my breathing. Every step echoed in the hollow of my chest. I called again, voice breaking this time. "Gerson." No answer, just the creak of branches and the distant rush of water. By afternoon, I'd stopped yelling. I just walked. My throat ached, my lips split from dryness. I found a crushed water bottle near a fallen log, his brand, and next to it a torn scrap of map, half-soaked, smeared with dirt. His handwriting was faint but legible. Cave, 1 mile east. Cave. What cave? I didn't know what I was chasing anymore. Help, revenge, answers. But my skin burned where the bear spray had touched me, and my thoughts started to spin in circles. He sprayed it for the bears. He said it would keep them away. But what if it was to bring them closer? I don't remember falling. 1 minute I was walking. The next the ground vanished and I was tumbling, scraping down an embankment, clutching at roots that tore loose in my hands. I hit something wet, the shock stealing my breath. The river. The current dragged me under once, twice, before spitting me against the bank. When I crawled out, my shoulder was bleeding. I couldn't tell from what, stone, branch, maybe claws. The forest above seemed to tilt, dark shapes moving between the trees. Watching. Waiting. I screamed his name one last time. And that's when I heard it, a growl, deep guttural, close. It came from behind me, a sound that vibrated through the bones. I turned and froze. A bear stood at the tree line, massive and ragged, its fur matted with something dark. Its eyes reflected gold in the fading light. It sniffed the air, stepped forward. I didn't move. Couldn't. My mind replayed Gerson's voice. "You'll see." The smell hit me next. Metallic sweetness, like the air before a lightning strike. The same scent clung to my clothes, my skin. The bear knew it too. It bared its teeth, a low rumble building in its chest. I ran. Branches whipped my face, my shoulder screamed with pain, but I ran until my lungs burned. The sound of pursuit followed, thuds, cracking wood, breath that wasn't mine. When I glanced back, the forest blurred. Something darker moved between the trunks, impossibly fast. I tripped on a root, went down hard. My vision exploded with stars. By the time I crawled to my feet, it was gone. Silence. Only the pulse in my ears. I stumbled until I found the tent again. Half collapsed, fabric flapping weakly. My hands shook as I grabbed my phone from my bag. No signal, 2% battery. The screen flickered, then died. The bear spray lay where I'd left it, empty, glinting in the dirt. My eyes burned, my throat raw. I screamed until my voice broke, the sound scattering into the trees, and then I saw it. Something shining near the fire pit. I crouched. It was a piece of paper folded neatly, almost lovingly. Gerson's handwriting. You'll see it too. The words didn't make sense at first. Then they did. He hadn't planned to hurt me directly. He'd planned to leave me here with the scent that drove bears wild, not away. That bear spray he'd bought wasn't repellent. It was attractant. Maybe mixed, maybe tampered with. I didn't know. But the smell clung to me now like second skin. The world tilted. A branch cracked behind me, deliberate this time. I turned slowly. The bear stood again, closer than before, half in shadow. I could see the scar across its muzzle, the way its sides heaved with each breath. The earth vibrated when it stepped forward. I backed away, tripped on the edge of the tent, fell hard. The sky above was turning the color of rust. For a heartbeat, I thought of every small betrayal I'd ignored. His texts to other women, his casual cruelties, the way he once laughed when I cried. I'd always told myself he was damaged, not dangerous. Now I saw the truth. He'd left me as bait. The bear lunged. The air filled with sound, snarls, my own scream, the tearing of fabric and flesh. Pain flooded everything. I rolled, kicked, clawed at the ground, somehow breaking free long enough to run blind through the trees. The world became flashes, bark, blood, river, rock. I don't remember hitting the edge. Only the sensation of falling, air screaming past, cold water swallowing me whole. When I opened my eyes again, it was daylight. A ceiling above me, white and humming. My body felt stitched together wrong. Tubes in my arms, machines whispering nearby. A nurse smiled when she saw I was awake. "You're lucky," she said softly. "2 hikers found you near the river. You were barely breathing." Her words barely touched me. I could still hear the forest, still smell that sweetness. Later, a sheriff came. A heavy man with kind eyes. He sat by the bed, hat in his hands. "Ma'am," he began, "I'm sorry to tell you, your friend didn't make it. We found him about a mile from your site. Looked like the same bear got him." I stared at him, numb. "The same bear," I repeated. He nodded. "Guess it circled back." When he left, I looked down at my hands. The nurses had scrubbed them clean, but I could still see the stains beneath the nails, the scratches, the proof that something primal had passed between me and the woods, and that I was never meant to walk away. They gave me my belongings in a plastic bag, wallet, phone, and that note, the one written in his careful looping script. "You'll see it too." I read it until the letters blurred. Now, at night, I leave the window open. I tell myself it's for the fresh air, but sometimes when the wind moves through the trees outside, I catch a faint trace of that metallic sweetness. I freeze, every nerve waiting. The doctors say I have survivor's guilt, maybe, but sometimes, just before sleep, I dream I'm still out there alone. The forest whispering, the tent flap open, the air sharp and waiting. And I wonder if Gerson saw what I saw before it took him, or if it was always meant to find me first.